You worked with terror cells. What makes these men tick?
Each story is going to be very individual. There's a lot of different things that push and pull somebody into engaging in this type of behavior. You know, one of the things to consider as well is that these are not necessarily the same type of behavior, right? What would drive somebody to join ISIL and be involved in these kinds of horrendous murders might be different from somebody who wants to go to Syria to fight against the Assad government.
So it's not the same psychological profile, you believe?
And it's not even the same behavior, right? I mean, we can understand why somebody would be interested in fighting against the Assad government that had killed 200,000 of its own people. And in fact, if you fight with certain groups, you're going to get U.S. money and resources. So, you know, what might pull somebody there might be different from what somebody would want to do actually engaging in terrorist
But just
acts.
speaking for the average person, they would say one must be crazy or out of their minds to want to do this. Would that be a fair assessment?
Not clinically. If you look at the studies, the empirical studies of terrorists, what they find is there's a very low incidence of mental health issues.
Mubin?
Yeah, the presence of psychopathology is very rare in terrorism. Sociopathy is a different story, where an individual may become numbed because of societal issues. But psychopathology, like a schizophrenic, for example, or a crazy person, as we call them, is quite rare.
Mm-hmm. But they're sociopaths, murderous sociopaths.
Well, the end result is going to be the same, right? It's going to be death and killing.
Robert, in the case of Jihadi John, he says it is believed that he was alienated after being detained in the airport in Tanzania. Right. How does that alienation morph into joining ISIS and beheading people?
I don't know. And I read the report, the detailed report about his travels from England to Tanzania and his being held up by immigration, going through the system, security services over a number of years. And, you know, from empirically speaking, from a former practitioner, empathy is one of the most important things as an investigator or in intelligence when you're working with people. However, Don, presuming that it's all accurate in his treatment, the alienation, it still wouldn't explain that big leap to psychopathic killer in a place like Syria. So it's really, really hard to conceive and to explain. And as Michael said, the paths are so many, and the different environmental factors, the other motivators, it tends to make a swirling cauldron of toxicity.
But there are many people, many teenagers, most young people feel like they are alienated. I mean, it's kind of part of growing up. The question is, how does one go from that to that on the scale, you know?
And that's what the government has spent millions trying to study. But what they found is that there isn't a clear pathway, and that this concept of radicalization isn't really something that can be used to predict who might be the next person.
Yeah, I can't say really what stopped you, Mubin, because you're actually a jihadist. But what made the difference for you to turn it around?
Well, I wanted to point out that ideology does play a role. Not all the time. You know, there are also socio-political factors that we should also look at, but ideology is also another factor. When we talk about sense of belonging, sense of identity, a lot of times that's constructed on the basis of ideology. For me, it was religious ideology. You know, I ended up in Pakistan with a completely unrelated religious excursion, and I had a chance encounter with the Taliban. I saw them as the heroes of the past, the romanticized versions of the true mujahideen, the true warriors from the past. I didn't grow up with political grievances, but after I encountered them and they told me about political grievances, suddenly I took on political grievances as one of the excuses that I would give to justify my actions. So, you know, your other guests are right. It's a very unique path. For every individual, it could be a whole host of things operating at the same time.
Okay, so I want to dig in a little bit deeper, because you said it's religious ideology. Was it religious ideology that attracted you to it, or was it religious ideology that saved you from becoming even more extreme?
Right. Well, it's interpretation of religious scriptures. My misinterpretations got me into it, and that ideology helped me. Yeah, helped the grievances resonate and make sense to me, because after all, it's a war on Islam. That's the only reason why they're doing this. But like you said, I mean, it was through study of the religion properly, a holistic, contextual understanding of the Quran that led me out of this.
Mm-hmm. Well, experts study terrorists. Michael, do you think that there is enough analysis being done on the effects of counterterrorism strategies?
I don't. I think that's one of the big problems. There was a Campbell study done in 2006 that looked at over 20,000 counterterrorism studies and could only find 7 that looked at whether the counterterrorism strategies the U.S. government were using and methods were effective at all. And that's one of the big problems that we have, is here we are 14 years after 9/11, and we still don't, as a government, seem to have a handle on what actually works and what doesn't. And it's something that I think is part of the problem.